All right, this is my favorite question. Actually, there's one about a balloon I like a little bit better than this one, but this one's really good.
This is the latter one.
That's the balloon one I like. This
I
is
I
the,
was not a fan of that one. I was just a little confused. Like,
Yeah,
how is there a giant
didn't
balloon?
make sense.
Like,
Like,
how is
can
there
I
a giant
picture this
balloon?
situation in my
Is
head?
it like an up scene? Like what is it?
well, let's do this one. Let's do this one, then we'll do the balloon. A toy spacecraft. A toy spacecraft is launched how? Directly upward. Okay? When the toy reaches its highest point, a spring is released and the toy splits into two parts. A 0.02 and a 0.08 kilogram respectively. Now, if you launch something straight up, when it gets to its highest point, what do you know about it? That's right, so visualize this. You throw it up, it gets to its highest point, and it splits into two pieces. Correct? But at the instant that it split, what was true about its momentum? It was zero. So what does the total momentum have to be? Zero. So Finn is giving us an indication of the only way the total momentum can be zero is if this is your toy spacecraft, if this is what it looks like at that moment and it splits into two pieces, this large piece could go this direction. Oh, the large piece could go this direction. And what would the small piece have to do? It has to go directly opposite the other way. Faster or slower?
Faster.
Wait, which piece?
Smaller piece of
The small one.
Faster.
Why?
Because equal the moment.
Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we have a conceptual framework. Let's answer the question. The 0.02, the lighter piece, moves horizontally due east. I drew it backward. Sorry. I drew it backward. My bad. Errors of today's negligible. True statements about the 0.8 kilogram piece include which of the following? Could the heavier piece move north if the lighter piece is moving east?
No.
No.
I just put one because.
Does it take longer for the heavier one to reach the ground?
No, there's no upper velocity.
No. Remember, when two objects are falling, the Earth pulls more on the more massive object, right? But because it's more massive, it's also harder to get it to go. So two objects with different masses still have the same free fall acceleration, right? Does it strike the ground farther? Does the heavier one strike the ground farther?
No.
No, because it's moving slower because the mass is more, right? So I got none. I got no, none of these make any sense to me.
So they hit the ground at the same time?
Yeah. 'Cause it's like-
You ever see me drop a heavy ball in a light ball?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You ever see me throw and drop an object?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need a
I
demonstration.
just put one because I felt like none was just like.
I had reasoning for why this was not James, and I just don't remember. Me and James were arguing about this one yesterday, and I don't remember which one it was.
The
I think it was this one. I don't know why I said this.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
could you explain four?
It just doesn't.
4?
Yeah.
Let me do 7, then we'll do 4.
Okay.
Oh, I got this one right.
Number 7?
All right. A balloon of mass m is floating, motionless in the air. A person of mass m. So visualize a hot air balloon. Okay? Let's visualize a hot air balloon. All right. You got my picture. Get it? Got it?
Oh, it's like a hot air balloon.
Does he think it was like a normal balloon?
A balloon of mass m, mass big M,
So it's confusing. Like, this balloon is floating up the sky.
is floating motionless in the air. A person of mass with mass less than m is on a rope ladder hanging from the balloon. The person begins to climb the ladder at a uniform speed v relative to the ground. What does the balloon do? Now, there's so many ways to think about this. How do you even climb up a ladder? What do you do to climb up a ladder?
Pull down on them.
You pull down on the ladder. Thank you. Right? Because Newton's third law says, if you pull down on the ladder, what does the ladder do? Pull up on you. But this balloon isn't attached to anything. So if you pull down on it, what's it going to do? Go down. Right? So that's a framework. That can get you at least go down. And then think about this. When we start this, it's motionless, true? So what do you know about the center of mass then? Velocity is 0, correct? So if the center of mass is, let's say, here, there's the center of mass. Where does the center of mass have to stay? Right there. Because all the forces are internal. The guy pulls down on the balloon and the balloon pulls up on the guy. True? So that means the speed of the center of mass has to stay 0, which means if the guy is moving up at some speed v, what does the balloon have to do? Move down, but it has to be at a speed less than v because it's more massive. So this is something that is I don't want to say it's obvious, but I think that it's interesting. This actually manifests in a couple different ways. This is something you might see. Let's say you were if you're boating. Let's say you're surfing. So here's the water. Okay. Here's water, and you're on a surfboard here. Okay. And you're on a surfboard. And if you're on a surfboard, if you start walking forward, what's going to happen to the surfboard? It's going to go backward relative to the water, true? It's also going to go backward relative to you. But what happens to the center of mass in you and the surfboard? It just stays the same. Right? Does that make some sense? It just stays the same. I think it was like 2006. I think it was 2006. I was with some friends and we were up in Canada, about 4 hours north of Toronto. And the geology of that part of Canada is really cool. It's called the Canadian Shield. That's the name of the geologic structure. It's called the Canadian Shield. And it's just granite, which is really cool. And we were boating on this river, and we pull up to the side of the river here, but it's all granite everywhere. And the guy who's driving the boat says, "Hey, will you go to the front of the boat, and you can just hop off and then tie us up to that tree so the boat doesn't get pulled down the river?" And I said, "Sure." So what I did was, trust me, this seemed very smart at the time, I promise. Okay, here's the water, and then we have like the granite is like here, right? The granite is here, and I go. We're in this boat here, and we pull up here, but he doesn't want to get too close because of the fact that, right? Because he doesn't want to bang the boat into the rock. So I, in my infinite wisdom, come up here to the front of the boat, okay? And really, this was really very close. It was really very close. And all I had to do was step onto the rock. All I had to do was step on the rock, man. That's all I had to do. And I'm looking back, I'm like, he's like, "You got this? You sure?" "Yeah, I got it, no problem." And I go to step onto the rock. And man, I should have better known better. If you think about it in a Newton's third law context, if you want to walk forward, you need to push back on the ground, right? But normally, the ground doesn't move. But the boat is free to move in the water. Or if you think about this in a center of mass context, if I move my center of mass forward, what happens to happen to the boat center of mass? It has to move back because the center of mass of the system has to stay the same. The moral of the story is I stepped forward onto the rock and there was no rock there because the whole boat had shifted back. And I missed and smashed my face right into the rocks. As I'm on my way down thinking, boy, there should be rocks there, I lifted my chin up so I hit the bottom of my chin and smashed all my teeth together. So I didn't lose any teeth, but the next, later that summer, I went to the dentist and he's like, why are all your fillings broken? I'm like, funny story. Funny story. You can actually get the same situation with these little dudes here, right?
Don't recreate it.
I will not. But this is the deal, right? If I want to walk forward on this, right? If I want to walk forward on this, what do I have to do?
Push back.
Right? You see the problem, right?
I felt the problem.
If you've ever been on a skateboard, you lean forward, you can feel exactly this situation, right? It often, actually, you'll see novice skateboarders do it the other way, where they lean back a little bit, and all of a sudden they're like moving back like this, right? Have you ever seen a novice skateboarder do that? All right, Megan, are you ready?
Yes.
That's step one.
It says, an object having initial momentum may be represented by the vector above. So when you look at this problem, this is the initial momentum vector. Find that? Then it says, which of these vector combos on the bottom could be the final momentum vectors? Well, what is implied about the initial momentum and final momentum? They have to be the same, true? Which means if I take my final momentum vectors and add them tip to tail, do I get this? Is the question. So the first one gives me these two vectors. And what happens if I add those two together? You get 0. Can you get this if you add those? No. Because you got to add them tip to tail, right? So if I add these tip to tail, what happens to them? They cancel. There's 0. Okay? Let's look at the next two. The next two is this one and then this one again. If I add those two tip to tail, do I get this one? No, it's way too long, right? The third one says, well, I'm going to take this and I'm going to add it to this. Can this plus this tip to tail give me this? No, it's actually going to be in the wrong direction. Does that make sense? The next one is this. Oh, it's all too long. Is it possible that, oh, shoot, sorry, my drawing board. Is it possible that these two could add to give you the thing you want? And it's a possibility, right? Because if I add these tip to tail, right, if I add these tip to tail, oh God, it's the drawing. Sorry, the drawing is just so bad. I am ashamed of how bad my drawing is right now. There, how's that look? Is that cool? So this is the original, and if I add them tip to tail, can I get that?
Oh, yeah.
Right? See how that works?
Does it have to be like so flat?
It does, because if this is the initial, your final has to match the initial.
But it's like facing like a weird way. Like you just move it.
Well, so this is what the picture looks like in D, correct?
Yeah.
This is what the picture looks like in D.
Mhm.
You have to add vectors tip to tail. Now, you could add the tip of this one to the tail of this one,
Yeah.
or you could do it the other way. you could add the tail of this one to the tip of this one.
But don't you also just know that they hit at like a 90-degree angle?
You do, that's right. What Sophia's referring to is the fact that you had this and then you had this. And one's gonna go this way and one's gonna go this way. Now, that's specific to that curling problem. This is a little bit more general, but in the end, the initial momentum has to equal the final momentum. All right, you guys all good now? All right. All right, open up your notebooks.
You gotta walk. What the fuck's good?
That's the thing you're not.
You wanna have a copy?
Now, this is a problem. This is a problem that you've seen before, or you've done, actually. I know all of you have done this before. And what we have is we have a cart.
So I forgot my lunch at home. I go all the way back to home, which is like 10 minutes away. Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
You forgot your lunch at home?
Yeah, I did. And since Katie drove separately, my mom doesn't have a car to come give it to me. So I have to go
Go
home.
on map. Don't go through Morningside.
Well, it's not much faster.
25 versus 35?
I think you still have to like,
It's all busy.
it's more,
Memphis are busy.
it's better to go on Morningside.
If you're gonna speed.
Yep.
Go 29.
Okay.
So if you take a heavy car and a light car, and you push them together on a spring, and you let them go, will they move away from each other?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Will they move away at the same speed? Which one do you have a sense is going to be moving faster? Why though? It's not because it's lighter. Less mass, which means less resistance to change in motion. True? Which applied more force though? The one with the spring or the one without the spring? Same forces, right? Okay. So we have this one mass big M, this one mass little m, this one speed big V, this one speed little v. Is that cool? Which experiences a larger impulse and which experiences more work? So on which one is more work done? Which one experiences more impulse? It's obviously little car, big car, or secret answer C. Same for both. Check your neighbor now. You should have an answer and some reasoning, if you don't mind.
It's force over time, and they have the same force at the same time, but for the two, I think
No, it's because it's still the force is applied.
has larger work than
It's supposed to, it's supposed to air on the surface. I think they both experience the same thing. Mass doesn't matter.
Because the force is the same,
What is the impulse? So they
As well as the same thing.
and then
Okay, what's your reason?
it's applied for the same amount of time.
So like a bigger mass, you multiply.
I got
But if you
I guess I know what it is.
Balance.
Like I did it all.
there's zero
Same force, same.
We started for our like.
Obviously, they're gonna equal out. What about the work?
Oh, wow. I guess it's a lot.
So it's the same.
Which experiences a larger impulse? Which has more work done?
They're both the same.
So then.
The forces apply at the same time and distance. It's the same thing when the force goes.
Also, I don't think that's what we
Yeah, me neither. It has a large velocity.
I think it's expression.
All right. Tell me about the impulse. Same for both? How do you know?
It's force over time, and they have the same force.
It's force times time.
Times time, that's it, yeah, sorry.
So, I actually agree. I think it's the same for both. This one?
Smaller.
Not the same.
The smaller. The smaller mass one. That's more work.
More work done on the small mass one?
No, the bigger mass one.
More work done on the bigger mass
This
one.
mass is on the top. It's only if you get a horsepower.
But
It's force over the force time. The smaller one goes further.
is it also delta?
The mass
That's always